Chapter 1. The Hunter. Names did not seem as important any more. It did not bother him he didn't know the girl's name. She had not spoken since the small group had asked him to be their guide. Yet from the first few minutes she had attached herself to him, and for the last 50 miles she had not allowed him to get more than 10 feet away. She was small-framed, with deep green eyes, and dirty blonde hair that was tangled when he joined the group 3 days before, and was still a mess. She did not speak and did not smile, but never let more than a few seconds go by without anxiously darting her eyes around to make sure he was close by. She followed him everywhere, shadowing him like a ghost. When he spoke, she listened with intelligent eyes, but did not change expression. He did not know her age, but guessed she could not be more than a teenager. The first night with the group, he had wondered about the sleeping arrangements. He had stayed up late just gazing at the small fire. She sat in silence and just watched him. When he got up and unrolled his sleeping bag on the fringes of the group, she got out a dirty blanket and lay down 5 feet away. When he got up to urinate, she followed him and turned her back at the last minute to protect his privacy. When he returned to the campsite, he shook out his sleeping bag to make sure no snakes had crawled in while he was away. Taking his cue, she shook her blanket in the same way before lying back down. According to the preacher, they had found the girl hiding in a burned-out apartment building 100 miles up the coast. She had cowered from them, and they finally decided that they could not help her. But when they moved on, she followed, staying part of the group but keeping her distance. And now the preacher told him he was pleased she had attached herself to someone, though they had all wondered at her strange behavior. Hunter was just known as Hunter. There had been other names before, but they had been forgotten or were no longer important. Now he just preferred to be known as Hunter. The hunter was not completely pleased to have a shadow, especially one who so badly needed a bath. A couple of times in the first 3 days he had bathed in a creek trying to give her a hint. She would sit on the bank, mostly looking away, occasionally glancing to make sure he was still close by, but no amount of coaxing, no words, no gestures could get her in the creek. Now, as they moved down the coast, Hunter was not even sure he could be an efficient guide any longer. Vast stretches of the now unfamiliar Highway 17 were under the sea. Other stretches were oceanfront. In just 6 short months, the barrier islands were gone. The oceans had risen. The storms came one after the other. The last storm was named. Nobody even cared any longer. And then the plagues came, nurtured in the newly made swamps they had incubated for just a season, then had mutated. They had first attacked the eastern seaboard. The initial mortality rate had been predicted to be 50%, but the end result had been closer to 99%. Hunter was a 1%er. He knew it, and he decided that everybody who remained alive was also a 1%er. Since they had reached the ocean, the going was slow. The mosquitoes were swarming in hordes. They still carried the deadly encephalitis, but everyone who was still alive had long ago proved their immunity. The plague had just taken 1 year to move across the country. It was rumored that in California it had been stopped in some areas, but those were just rumors. In the second year it moved to Europe. In the third year it moved around the world, missing only the most isolated places. The factories lay silent. The electric grid crashed in the first 6 months. The pumps did not run for the nuclear reactors, and they melted down. Hunter had not seen but one electric bulb burning in almost a year, and that had been in an isolated farmhouse that happened to have a generator. It was on this fourth day with the group that he decided something had to be done with the girl. He was sure she had not taken a bath in a month or more, and in the July heat she was reeking. Since she had decided to attach herself to him, his sensitive nose could no longer stand the pungent odor of her unwashed body. When they stopped for the night somewhere on what he thought was the former Albemarle Sound, he talked with the preacher in low tones while the girl was eating. He had managed to shoot a wild pig, and it was the best they had eaten in the 4 days. The preacher agreed that something had to be done. It was decided that 2 of the women would help her bathe, by force if necessary. They would approach the girl directly after dinner. But the girl was like a hawk and realized something was being planned behind her back. Directly after dinner she disappeared into the woods. A search did not reveal her hiding place, and finally they gave up. The next morning she was found sleeping on her dirty blanket, 5 feet away from the hunter. Nothing else was said about baths. That night the hunter had nightmares about a dark man with blood on his boots. But they were clouded dreams, and by noon the next day he had forgotten them completely.